Hello and welcome back to Kinboshi Radio. And Nick, are you prepared for an episode filled with sadness based on Chris Sumo's recent report on the happenings of this tournament?
Oh, absolutely. I'm lowering my expectations now, and I'm going to go into this with a very open mind.
Yeah, we'll just see it. I mean, we'll just get right into it. So we'll break this kind of down into tiers. We'll look at the Sanyaku, the guys who are supposed to be contending, and then we'll do sort of that top tier of M1 to M5, those kind of dark horses. Then we'll get the middle and the bottom of the Banzuke as well. But it is perhaps a graveyard up at the top. Obviously, Terunofuji's up there, and Hoshoryu's newly promoted to Ozeki and Kotonowaka to Sekiwake, but sounds like Terunofuji might miss yet again, I guess, which is tough, and Takakeisho, I haven't heard anything one way or the other. What do you think, Nick, about our Sanyaku this time?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because like you said, I think Terunofuji is... I guess they haven't said that he's planning to be out. He's kind of keeping it vague right now, but I think it's primarily due to back injuries, which is totally different than what he just had surgery from and recovered, which is not great.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's interesting that I haven't heard anything about Takakeisho. Like, they're just completely silent on that, so hopefully that's a good thing. Like, he's going to come back in. Kirishima is training again, so hopefully that's a good sign.
Yeah, and I mean, he looked good when he did come back, even though he obviously wasn't healthy. He almost kachikoshi'd, but it kind of came off the rails at the end there when he had to fight Hoshoryu, Asanoyama, and then Abi, and lost his last three. So already caught up on.
But yeah, and then the savior of the group is Hoshoryu, which they're like, yeah, he's just great, doing well, training hard, continuing to look good, which thank God.
Yeah.
At least one.
Yeah, there's one. And at this point, I think I'm hoping, as far as we talk a lot, we are big wringers of hands and clutchers of pearls with the health of the division moving forward. But if the two young Mongolians, if Hoshoryu and Kirishima can be healthy and build a rivalry and kind of continue on their upward trajectory, then I think we're fine, in spite of the fact that we all know the troubles with Teru and Takakeisho, who've been carrying the division for a while. Because that's the other thing with Kirishima, like, Kirishima made it to Ozeki at an incredibly young age as well, in my opinion. He's still very much in the prime of his career, not a guy like Mitakeumi, who was kind of getting there as sort of a last gasp. And Hoshoryu obviously is insanely young, being 24 years old and getting all the way to Ozeki. So, I mean, those two guys, we could see a 5-year spell here of them at the top of the division, holding it down. This could be the beginning of it, which is also helpful, I think, because some of the other contenders down at Sekiwake, Daisho and Wakamoto Haru, who you and I both want to see make it to Ozeki, but they're both in the age bracket that it would be much more of a Mitakeumi run to Ozeki, where maybe they get there and then lose it because their career starts to unwind just as it naturally would. And then even when you look at Komosubi, like, Nishikigi, sure, from his recent performance, deserves to be there, but he's not gonna stay there, I don't think. Not based on what we've seen from him before. And then Tobizaru, too. Like, cool, deserves it, love to see it. So it's really Kirishima and Hoshoryu, and then Kotonowaka as the next guy who, I mean, all the talk was that he would make it to Yokozuna because he has that family history as well, but like a year and a half ago when he blew out his knee, that's when I personally started to lose faith that he would ever get there. But maybe he will. He has not had recursions of his injury the way a lot of guys have. So maybe we have 3 guys in this Sanyaku who are the future, and then a lot of guys who are the right now, but we don't know how long that will last.
Yeah, sorry, I totally agree. I was just looking at, kind of jump down to the next group with the Sekiwaka. Like you said, Kotonowaka, I think, has been performing super well. I want to say 2022 and 2023, he's only had 1 negative tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that I don't know, at this level, I don't know that he'll get to Yokozuna. It's typically like 8-7, like 9-6, like barely positive, but it's steady. It's steady, and I think he's just going to keep climbing. He's clearly got the talent.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, he is still a young guy. He's a year younger than Kirishima, and although he's 2 years older than Hoshoryu, which in my head, Kotonowaka is like the young guy, but no, it's pretty insane how young Hoshoryu is.
I think it's just looking at Kotonowaka's face. He's so many like Hoshoryu, Kirishima, like they look so much older than they actually are, and then you get Kotonowaka who looks very young.
Yeah.
But then I don't remember what were the numbers potential if they were going to get it that Wakamoto Haru and Daisho would need for the promotion. I think they're pretty out of it.
Yeah, like personally, I don't think it's going to happen. It's pretty brutal. So between his last two tournaments, Daisho is sitting at 19, which means he'd need a 14-1 and a U show to make it. I personally don't see any way that happens, and it's the exact same math for Wakamoto Haru because they both had 10 wins 2 tournaments ago when they missed their first run, and then 9 wins in this last one, which again, they're stellar Sekiwakes. It the same way we talk about yo-yo men between Makuuchi and Juryo. Like these guys who are too good for Juryo, but when they get up, but Busho's on. We just watched the Busho's on show again, right? Daisho and Wakamoto Haru, like they have the fighting skill level of an Ozeki. They just don't have the consistency of an Ozeki.
I agree with that. And I think there's, depending on all the injuries with all the top people, like there's a very slim chance that they could get it. But you're right. I don't see it happening. And again, there's nothing wrong. I think I said that with Hoshoryu before he got promoted. There's nothing wrong with sitting at Sekiwake for a while.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And
it still means you're better than 95% of the division.
Exactly. Yeah. And just. Yeah, they'll still have some stellar runs. Maybe they both even win another Basho because they're that good. I love the criteria for getting to Ozeki, and I'm very thankful that it doesn't get lowered because it just it feels so painful when guys get to Ozeki and then drop down. So I'm like, yeah, if Daisho and Wakamoto Haru are going to have these kind of performances, then maybe they don't make it up, you know?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like, nobody wants to see, like, what happened to Mitakeumi last year, what's happened to others in the past. It's nice to see the consistency where it's like you look at the Ozek and you're like, oh, yeah, they're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, none of us want to ride the Shodai Mitakeumi train anymore. We're all done there. But... it's interesting near the top two. So like, there's also that Maegashira 1 to 5 range, and what's always interesting, those are the guys who have a rough road because they have to fight all those Sanyaku dudes at least as long as they're all winning. But they're not up in those ranks. But this is where a lot of dark horse candidates come from. Or recently we've seen a lot of new young guys, but it's a ton of retreads this time. Like. Abi has dropped to M2. Hokutofuji has risen all the way to M1, which I think is too much. Meisei's back to M1, which at this point, I used to be a big believer in Meisei, and like I still am. I think he's a good fighter. I have no belief that an Ozeki run will ever happen, and I think he's another one of these guys who will go back and forth to Komusubi and just hang out there. I don't know that Sekiwake is in the picture again for him. Asanoyama's on his walk back up, but that guy is still hurt, I think. Like, at this point, this is what we were worried about. It's his age. Like, his skill is still there, but he's at the age where he's going to be getting injured. Tamawashi doesn't get injured. He's the Iron Man, but he also is another old guy. Ura's still hanging around up there. Takanosho shockingly got pushed up into here, even though, like, he has not been impressive down at the mid-Maegashiras. So, like, tons of retreads there. Which is interesting to me because I therefore just think like those are guys who are at a high rank and are just kind of 8 and 7 fodder. Asanoyama could be more than that if he weren't hurt. Abi, if he bounces back, it's fine. But then in addition to that retread area, there's also Gonoyama and Shonan Naomi. But I'm worried because we talk all the time about the jetpack and how deadly that can be for guys. For Shonan Naomi to have jumped all the way up from Maegashira 14 to Maegashira 5 on the back of a 10 and 5 record, too much, man. He's gonna struggle. And then for Gonoyama to do the same, he was Maegashira 13 on a 10-5 record all the way to M5. I know that they have to do what they have to do to make the numbers work, but I don't know, man. Maybe those two benefit from this being a lot of retreads up there. Maybe Uda and Takanosho and Shodai are going to give up wins to them. But I don't know. How do you feel about this mix, like this heavy retread and then a little bit of over-promoted young stars mix?
M1 through M5 is going to be interesting this time. I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of faith in them. Abi and Shodai are always, and Tamawashi are typically always in this area, kind of going up and down a little bit. God, I hate seeing Takanosho even at M4 just because I always get the little bit of faith where you're like, maybe this time. And then he always tanks.
Yeah, and
but
even
I want him to do well.
Yeah, like look back at his records, man. It's insane. He 8-7 at M9, and now somehow that minimal Kachikoshi got him a 5-rank promotion to M4. He was at M8 and finished 7-8. He was at M11 and finished 8-7. He was at M9 and finished 6-9. Before that, he has a 7-8, an 8-7, and then an injury tournament. But like, we're going back so far to get back to May of 2022 when he was 11-4 and until those final 3 days was in the running to win that Basho. And before that was November of 2021 when he had his 11-4 that got him pushed all the way to Sekiwake. And then for the 2022 season, a lot of commentators were picking him to make an Ozeki run at the exact same time that Mitakeumi made his, except that he fell apart. It's really just like in the last 2.5 years, he's had 2 very good performances, a pair of 11-4s, and then losing records and minimal 8-7 Kachikoshis, and somehow I'm not even kidding, not even a single 9-win tournament in that run. I love this guy, and he's just yet another one of those ones who all the tools are there. He should be more than he is, but he's just not.
He's, for some reason, there's no numbers backing it up, but I have so much faith in him for some reason. And like you said, the math doesn't work for him at all.
Yeah. He looks so good when he loses. His losses always feel like a hair's breadth from a victory. At least that's my idea of why you feel the way you do, because I was always that way as well until this run of his M11, M8, M9. In one of those tournaments, I expected him to contend for and win the Basho because I was like, oh, he's fighting against guys who are so far below his skill level. This is an easy 12 wins for him, and hopefully if 12 wins gets it done, then he'll get a Yusho. But then those 8-7, 7-8, 8-7... maybe I'm a jilted lover. Maybe I just feel betrayed by the man with the most charming smile in sumo, but yeah.
No, I think you're being more realistic, and I'm still getting charmed by that smile. Like, I just can't help it.
Yeah, he's great. So yeah, he's one that, like, I don't know, sure, maybe he gets 11 wins. He's good. All these guys though, all these retreads, like, they're all good. They all have pedigree. Asanoyama is a former Ozeki. Shodai is a former Ozeki. Abi is a former Sekiwake. Hokutofuji is a college Yokozuna. Tamawashi has won 2 Yusho. Like, it's stellar there. But
it does make me worried, like you had said, for Gonoyama and Shonen though.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason that, as well as some of the newcomers have done in the last year, there's a reason none of them are up here now.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. I just feel like this is going to be Kinbozan Part 2, which, speaking of, let's drop down and kind of look at that middle tier of the Bonsuke, kind of the M6 down to M11. And like Onosho we both like, but he's never really been consistent and he's very one-dimensional. He just like strikes me as he has more weight, but he's just kind of a lesser version of Daisho, and we've seen Daisho's struggles with being one-dimensional. Ryuden, super happy to have the bounce back and have him back up about where he belongs, but with his age, I don't expect a ton out of him. Oho, I have no idea. That guy is such a yo-yo. And Big Papa missing last tournament. I don't know. I'm even starting to... I'm just so sad, man. Even if I can't even be happy about Papayasu, I don't know what's wrong with me. But in this middle range, the biggest sad story is Hakuoho, who He might fight in this tournament, and if he does, it is a mistake. They're saying he needs shoulder surgery. This is exactly what we were worried about. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't be this negative, but I just am like, it's over. He's the golden boy. I was all excited for him to make a Yokozuna run, but now if he's going to have these recurring shoulder injuries, this sport, man, it's infuriating that he was injured for his last 2 Juryo Bashos and for his Makuuchi one, and they just kept rolling him out there, and now we probably lost this guy's career. He's probably never going to be a Yokozuna. I could still see him making it to Ozeki, but I would not be shocked at all now if he's a guy who's off and on, injured constantly, and caps out at Sekiwake.
The slight glimmer of hope I have here, which, okay, so it's a bummer that he's at M9 and Ganoyama ended up at 5. It was just because of the rankings. Like, I totally understand why. I wish that had gotten flipped because Hakuoho's coach is like, it's. I don't like that they're so close to the tournament, and he's still kind of wishy-washy on this. But he's like, oh yeah, the shoulder injury, when they talked about it, was more complicated than they thought, so they might pull him out for surgery. I'm like, well, just do it now. Just do it as soon as possible, because then he's back as soon as possible. Because like you said, if you just ignore it, it's going to be like Takakeisho and all these top guys where they're just broken forever. And it still sucks, though, because at M9, like if he's out for, say, 2 Basho to recover, it's going to drop him significantly.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see like a Wakataka Kage where there's like, hey, I'm good enough, I can come back.
Yeah, and that'll be an excellent test case. I actually am slightly more confident on Wakataka Kage returning healthy than Hakuoho. Well, maybe he changes his style and figures it out or whatever, but because Wakataka Kage's injury is a leg injury, but the majority of his X factor comes from that strong left arm, that's fine. But Hakuoho thus far has been a grappling guy. Like, his arms have been incredibly crucial to his victories. So I worry, you know what I mean? Just that, like, the specific injury is going to be worse for his trajectory, unless maybe he learns a new style. He learns to drive with his legs if he doesn't need to use that left arm as much and can focus on a strong right arm and then driving guys with his legs. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to see the trend continue where these guys are injured and they're actually going to take the times for themselves to heal and get the surgeries. I mean, he's young enough. If you address it young, he might be able to recover at least a majority, maybe not 100%, but that's a better route than it just breaking.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Very sad. I don't know. So we'll see. But, you know, a guy whom we never talk enough about, but Hirodoumi is only 23 years old, and he's up here still grinding. Like, it's interesting. I think that Hirodoumi and Nishikifuji, who we are really big on, have extremely similar sort of performance matrices, and even like size and stuff like that. But we really got starstruck by Nishikifuji. Hirodoumi, I know he just got blasted in the last Basho and they kind of under-demoted him, so he still is a little higher. But like, I don't know. I think that guy is really good and exciting, and if he gets to feast on some of these middle rankers, then that might be helpful for him. And then Kinbozan, another one of the sort of young next generation. What do you think here? He had an abysmal Basho in May and didn't... He like stabilized, but with 7 and 8 last time, so he's still hanging out at M10. What do you expect from Kinbozan here?
I don't know. It's hard with only 3 Makuuchi tournaments to know for sure how it's gonna go. I think at M10 it's probably reasonably safe to say like he'll do okay. It's kind of like Hakuseiho, where it's like, oh, they either do really, really well, or they kind of like, once they're just not quite to the point where I think they should be really even like M7 or above. I think this is probably the better range to kind of test it out and let them feel it out. So I think, I think both of them would go, I would expect at least 8 or 9. Yeah.
Is that Hirodoumi or Hokuseiho that you're thinking is another 8 or 9?
Oh, sorry, with Hokuseiho and Kinbozan.
No, I like that.
Hirodoumi, I think should do solidly 8 or should be solidly 9.
Yeah. I was just curious because that was the other one I wanted to talk about was Hokuseiho, because like, I don't know what do we feel about Hokuseiho and his abilities moving forward. So obviously, yet again, another guy who, this is why we're worried for Shonan Naomi and Gonoyama. Like, Jetpack, M6, got blasted 5 and 10. I
think Hakuoho... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, I'm just curious. He's so reliant on literally that one strategy where he just does all one. I think it's his left that he usually leads with. Just all left arm and just tries to swing guys around, which... Yeah, maybe that is the right strategy because of his completely out of the ordinary height for the division, but I don't know. I personally get more excited by all-around wrestlers who have multiple things to go to and get a little worried when I just keep seeing the same thing.
That's exactly what I was going to touch on. Is he suffers like a lesser version of, or it's not as a refined version of like Abi. Abi is a very one-dimensional. You know what he's going to come through, but he's good enough where it still works. Hakuoho it didn't work. It works well at this range and below, but once you start getting up to towards the top where people like they have the tools to counter that, even if they've never really fought anybody as tall as he is, the basics mechanics are still, kind of the same, and they're able to counter that, and he just doesn't have... He just needs like something else so that if the first move doesn't work, then do this.
Right. And like, I don't know what that something else is, because maybe, like, honestly, when you're that tall, maybe it is more difficult to use other strategies. Like, you can't really be a body grappler like Shodai because you're coming from over top of your opponent, so you can't kind of get low and drive into them. And also, being a pusher thruster requires you to get low and get inside. Maybe that's really difficult. Like, maybe his height at this point is a disadvantage and he can't fight in these other ways. I don't know. But yeah, I wish his coach is the GOAT. And so I would have to think that Hakuoho could figure out a way to teach him some sort of other strategy.
Or at the very least, he's just going to have to refine it to the point where it's like perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where even knowing where it's coming from, you're like, God, he's so good at this. It's just almost impossible to deal with. That's
right.
Really your hope.
Yeah, you made the Abi comparison, and obviously it's radically different styles, but the idea is, yeah, Abi does one thing. It's just that it was this like hyper sharpened arrowhead. And yeah, sometimes the arrow went wide left, and then Abi was absolutely doomed. But yeah.
And he'll spice it up occasionally with like a spin or a slap, but
yeah,
you know what's coming 99% of the time.
Exactly. And then Mitake Yumi over here, like, I don't know. I mean, don't really know. Guy looks great in the matches he wins. Looks very strong, and then loses 12 matches. So, his last 3 Basho were 4-11, 9-6, 3-12. So if anyone believes they can predict what he's going to do, then tell me. I have no idea.
God, he's definitely somebody where I almost think he's at the point where it's like, when do you just kind of retire and walk away? Do you wait until you get bounced out of the division like a lot of the people have, like some of the older group? But he's not even that old. He should still, I don't know, I expect a little bit better, but I think you're within a year of him just disappearing.
I know, like the Ozeki, he's never going back to Ozeki. Like Shodai, I still have an outside belief that maybe, but it's kind of in the same way that before Tochinoshin's injuries got the best of him, you were always kind of like maybe, or Takayasu, you're like maybe, but it's not gonna happen. But speaking of these old guys who keep it going, let's move to this bottom tier and start with Terunofuji, the sexiest legs in the division. Like, I don't know. I still think this guy's cooked, and he's been cooked for over a year, and I hate that, and I also don't understand it, because what I don't understand is, like, he's taking such good care of his body. He's in such good physical shape, it's almost just like as if his technique has eroded somehow, which is insane because it's supposed to be the exact opposite, right? As you get older, you're supposed to like refine your technique and you beat guys by KG veteran moves. That's basically what Okino Umi was doing for the last year and a half before he retired. Is his physical strengths were gone. But like Terunofuji, I just look, the guy is he's a workout animal. He's always in the gym, and you can see it with his legs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a beast, but it's just not happening. What is I don't understand.
This is another one where I can't explain why it's happening. Like you said, he's so strong, he's got good form, but he just can't win. Yeah, I don't know if it's just a lot of bad luck or everybody else is having a really good time. I don't know. I have nothing for that one.
Yeah, and like he'll get his kachis and stuff, but at these insane, like his kachis were at M16, M12, M15. You know what I mean? So like if I don't know, so I guess at M12 he can still do it. Then he's in that low range where he's just gets enough wins against enough guys, but I don't. And then like this whole bottom, whereas the last Basho, we were super excited because we had this mix of overqualified guys dropping down like Ryuden, and the new exciting guys coming up like Gonoyama, Shonan-no-umi, Hakuoho. But now this is really it's retread city down here, and it's a lot of guys who, like you said, could be on their final trip in Makuuchi. Sado-no-umi, I actually think is better than this. He's the one who I think is going to push on. But Terunofuji, I could easily see him falling apart. Myogiru is a solid veteran. I don't see him falling apart, but Chiyoshoma is always flirting with demotion here. Tsurugisho looks good at times, but is flirting with demotion. Kagayaki, a traditional yo-yo man. Daishoho, who knows what you're going to get from him. Aoyama, we've had our worries about, but is still sticking around. So like a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then you've got these like damaged goods young guys here is like our version of exciting. Like Nishikifuji all the way down here. Hey, maybe he pushes on and does stellar, but right now it's almost like it's in his head and he's kind of wrecked. Kotoshoho has never recaptured the form that he had when he made it into Makuuchi the first time before that devastating injury, way back in, I think it was 2021 maybe that he got injured. But he had like come into the division, raced all the way up to Maegashira 3, whatever though. And then Atami Fuji, who was a young guy, he came up when he was 19 into the division. Now he's, is he 21? No, I think he's 20 still. But he'll be 21 for the start of the tournament. But, just if you watch him in Juryo, he's taped up like a friggin' mummy. I don't have faith that his body is going to support him the way it needed to if he was going to make a push forward. Is there anything in this bottom that you're looking forward to as an exciting storyline, or?
Kind of like you said, like I hope Nishikifuji does, I mean, well enough to bounce up a few. I think he probably will. But it's kind of like a bit of a letdown after like how stacked the bottom was last time. Then you come back to this, you're like, oh yeah, that's just a reminder of this is what it normally is.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think if Atami Fuji was going to come into Makuuchi, thank God he did this time and not on the last Basho, because he would have gotten murdered.
Yeah, it would have been
with
rough.
That level of talent. Versus now, it's like he might stay up.
Yeah. I mean, because like you're saying, like, let's take Nishikifuji for an example. Like, just in this bottom tier, I see, like, 9 built-in wins for him. Nishikifuji should beat Daishoho 1, Tsurugisho 2, Kagayaki 3, Chiyoshoma 4, Kotoshoho 5, Aoyama 6, Terunofuji 7. So, like, that should just happen. And then he's probably better than Sado-no-umi and Myogiru, but I see those two as kind of a coin flip. Like, he'll beat one of those veterans, he'll lose one of those veterans. And then Atami Fuji, another coin flip for me. I'm like, I don't know. The Atami Fuji 2 years ago, I probably would have picked him over Nishikifuji, but now probably Nishikifuji. But so, like, if those things go his way, like, that's just 9 wins. And then he can hopefully rip off some wins against some of the higher ranked guys and get to like 11, and then he's back on the choo-choo hype express.
I do think this is so with the just really the beatdown that Atami Fuji got last time. I do think that's valuable experience. You know, so it's not coming in now where like the last time where he came in and he was just everybody's super hyped up, like, oh, this guy's gonna be the best, he's gonna clear through, and then he just got wrecked because he didn't know what to expect. And he fought some really tough people, and now he's going into it at least knowing what he's going to be up against and kind of sliding more quietly in.
And let's say this too. Like when he came up the first time, he had he was promoted after an 8-7 record at Juryo 3. He was very much over promoted into Maegashira. They just like wanted to bring the young guy in. So there was that, and he also was promoted to Makuuchi like less than a year after being promoted from Makushita. So it was something like in 11 months or whatever, he went from fighting in Makushita, where you only fight 7 matches over a 15-week span, to fighting in Makuuchi. So in that case, we should probably cut him some slack, and then he also had injury problems. This time, he's coming in after a 13-2 record in Juryo and an 11-4 at Juryo 1, where he also won the Juryo Yusho at the last tournament. So yeah, very much kind of has this momentum behind him that wasn't there before. Before he was kind of like elevated on promise, and here he's elevated on fact.
Yep, which obviously we've seen like 9 times out of 10 that's exactly what happens when it's like, oh, this person should do well, let's just give him the rank, and then it just kind of backfires.
I'm with you. So that'll be exciting. I mean, if something happens there, cool. Because the same narrative that we spit out about Nishiki Fuji could happen for Atami Fuji instead. He could be the guy with 9 built-in wins and then maybe 2 plus or minuses to push him to 11. How about, like we said, if Terunofuji doesn't fight, and if Takakeisho doesn't fight, I don't know. Do you have a prediction for who you think's going to win this one?
Man, it's so tough with all like the mystery injuries and everybody just kind of floating around.
Right, like even someone like Asanoyama, it's like, well, but is he healthy? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would guess the odds obviously clearly favor either Kirishima or Hoshoryu, depending on how healed Kirishima is. But I would give it like even between those two with just health, like a 70-30 towards Hoshoryu.
Same.
I think he's the one who, looking at the numbers and everything, makes the most sense, and just with the unknown nature of basically everybody around him.
Yeah, and then he's got the momentum. Hoshoryu 3 straight tournaments with double-digit victories, and all of those were at Sekiwake. So he's going to be fighting the exact same guys that he's been fighting, except we just talked about how, like, for instance, this time around, Komusubi seems a little soft, and how the M1 through 5 seems soft. Like, softer than it has been, so he should be able to feast. But I'm also with you that it doesn't feel like a slam dunk even with Hoshoryu. Like, he's got to be the pick, but, like, I don't know that we should be surprised if Tamawashi is out there playing spoiler all of a sudden on day 13 again.
No, 100%. Or with Takakeisho, if he comes back and he's, mostly healthy, he can ruin some people's chances at the Basho.
Yeah, exactly.
He's too good.
Yeah. How about give me one like dark horse pick? Like, who's one shock surprise kind of wrestler who, like, a lot of times when we talk about this, we're talking about a guy who's underranked and therefore sort of feasts on bad wrestlers. Abi, when he was coming back into the division, we talked a lot about him, how he stabilized at Sekiwake because he was no longer getting those soft gimme wins that he was getting after his suspension coming back up. Ryuden came in and was getting the soft gimme wins, and then we finally 2 tournaments ago kind of saw the end of that and saw him get knocked down before stabilizing. Who's someone who could be the surprise contender, not necessarily up in those top echelons, but because they start feasting on, frankly, inferior Rikishi?
I'm going to go the sad route, and I'm going with Takayasu.
Ah, Big Papa!
In the last, couple days. Not necessarily a win, but, he will be. I'm saying he's going to be top 2 or 3.
Yeah. Last Basho broke my heart so aggressively, because otherwise it was this thing, right? He was on this pattern where he misses a chunk of a tournament, rests up his body, comes back and is stellar, and my man lost every match from day 6 to day 12 after being 5-0 and then finished 7-8, and I just it hurt me so bad.
And with that, I'm like, oh, it could just be a fluke thing. I'm like, or is this finally The end. It's got to be one. It's one of the two.
Yeah, the announcers on NHK World or whatever have been talking for the last couple Bashos that he's competed the full tournament in, saying that his shoulder blast doesn't look to be as strong as it used to be, and he doesn't seem to have as much power. And like you're saying, like we talk about one-dimensional, Takayasu is not one-dimensional in the way a guy like Abi is, but he always starts the exact same way. You know what I mean? There's no tournament where he goes straight for the Mawashi and grapples them, or there's no tournament where he goes for a trip right at the beginning, or even a Henka. Like it's always he leads with the shoulder blast. He uses that to get his opponent in an unfavorable position so that if he wants the Mawashi, he can get it, or if he wants to push them, he's got them off balance. But if he's not going to have the same power in the shoulder blast, then I don't know.
And I hate bringing this up because it's so I'm 100% Team Abi, and this was a bit of a dark moment. But I've noticed since he lost to Abi in November, it's been noticeable that because the first couple tournaments after that, he came in a lot softer. Yeah, like either it was like a fear thing or an injury thing with his neck, but since then it's been in a decline.
Yep. You're just right. It's frustrating. I'm not trying to. It's a combat sport, whatever. They all sign up for this, right? So we can be mad at Abi for what looks to be ending Takayasu's career, and that's fine, but just, I don't think Takayasu would have any bitterness towards Abi. Like, it's a combat sport, man. They signed up for it. But when you have a brutal concussion and then go back into the dojo like less than 15 minutes later and do it again, at some point you gotta. The dude has kids now, right? Like, there's a reason we call him Papa Yasu ever since he had his kid a couple years ago. Like, maybe he needs to get out of here and start seeing a neurologist, because I don't want friggin' CTE and like the NFL stuff here, or like, God forbid, what happened to a lot of pro wrestlers or whatever with the head trauma, and then like, frankly, going insane, committing suicide, or the one dude who killed his family. Like, I'm not saying Takayasu's gonna do it, but like, this is serious, and no one is saying anything. No one acts like it's serious, and this could ruin someone's life.
Not only that, but like the severe neck injury could also lead to just your body, like partial paralysis. Like, you could cripple yourself if you've already weakened that and not strengthened it back up.
Yeah, Ishiuda, who, like, to be completely honest, like, I'm happy Ishiuda is now a coach in Hakuoho's stable and just chose never to come back from that brutal injury. Like, he probably made the correct decision that so few of these guys are brave enough to make, you know?
No, I agree. Yeah. But with all that in mind, still picking him for my dark horse.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to see it, and I would love to see him right into the sunset. I'm right there with you. I would rather it be Takayasu, but I'm really partial to Myogiru, and have been ever since September of 2021, because he was Maegashira 10. He went 11-4 and was runner-up. He was leading that Basho for most of it, almost won that tournament. It was coming down to him and Terunofuji, and it was ridiculous. Because he's the consummate career grinder, you know? So I'm just hoping that maybe there's some magic coming back. It was September 2 years ago that he made his run and almost won a Yusho. Maybe this time he can do it again, because you and I are both very unimpressed with the bottom of the Bansuke. So someone in that bottom of the Bansuke is going to get 12 wins. It's going to happen, because they're just, I mean, they could, I guess, all just like knock each other out of it, but I'm just so convinced that there's so much basically like Deadwood caliber fighting spirit that someone could really come out of that with a lot of padded victories. So I'm thinking maybe it's Myogiru, and I would just love to see that again, because I really like that guy.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see that. I mean, we've seen them get close before, so I don't see anything wrong or why they can't do that now. Yeah,
I mean, Hakuoho was down there in that range and was a contender in the final day for the last Basho, so who knows, maybe. Other than that, is there any story that you're really looking forward to following? We both think it's probably It's probably Hoshoryu has the best chance of winning this thing, but if you gave me Hoshoryu or the field, I'd probably give it like an 80-20 advantage to the field. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, no one else has a 20% chance of winning this, so he's by far the favorite, but I'm like, but that ain't that good.
Honestly, I think the main storyline is I just want to see who shows up on day one.
Yes! Let's see what this actually looks like. I'm with you. I wasn't even thinking about that, but that is a great point, man. Like, day one, I want to see what the actual Banzuke is, not the printed one. Who's actually there?
Yep, because you never know. It's like if Terunofuji shows up and his back is feeling okay, or he's just taking enough painkillers or something right through it. Takakeisho's good. This could be totally different than what we thought.
Totally. I like it. And then I'll just throw this out there just a little bit. Like, for those of you degenerates like us who pay attention to Juryo as well, like Tamashoho's been on this rise, yet another Mongolian, but having a weird late career resurgence. So, like, he's up at J1 now, and Roga, the Tuvin, is at J1 there, so maybe he comes up. Kitano Waka's another young guy who looks exciting, and so is Oshoma, but he really struggled last Basho and seems to be running out of steam, but he's at J4. But the real story to me in Juryo is the final four dudes. Kiho and Asakoryu, formerly Ishizaki, two tiny muscle men, the heirs of Ishiura. Very excited for them. Kiho had to pull out of the last Basho injured, but had already gotten his Kachikoshi, so I hope that that's not another guy that we're going to lose to injury. But then just under them, Onosato and Tenshoho. Tenshoho, the former Mukai Nakano, another Hakuoho protege, as he continues to push young wrestlers through. Mukai Nakano is a more traditional big blaster. Just imagine a guy. He's a little smaller than Mitakeumi, but someone who fights like Mitakeumi down there. A big belly, kind of can round out guys and super strong. But Onosato is one who... tons of college pedigree. A year ago, actually, everybody was talking about... Ochiai and Onosato. Ochiai, of course, now Hakuoho, as the two guys who were going to redefine the division and two guys who they thought would be Yokozunas and have a Yokozuna battle for a decade. That's how highly people think of Onosato, who, again, is only fighting in his third ever tournament here, and he's at J14, so didn't rise as fast and isn't as young as Hakuoho, but he's bigger and he's healthier. And I am really excited to see if he can push on, since I'm a little bit losing faith with the Hakuoho journey due to that injury. Oh, and by the way, Onosato's Oyakata is the former Yokozuna Kiseno Sato. So that's another thing in his corner. But other than that, thanks for listening, everybody. Looking forward to the Basho. Once it starts, like you said, Nick, once it starts, it's going to be awesome, as it always is. It just kind of always stinks to lose the stories we thought we were going to be watching at the beginning, but new stories always show up. So until then, thanks for listening, everybody.